Right, a massive welcome back to Lawrence Wright with Chemtrails and Flat Earth Revisited. Controversial and entertailing. Loz pokes our beliefs and encroaches on our comfort zones with two subjects. First, the modern phenomenon known as chemtrails, an observable phenomenon carried out in most countries' airspace and denied by aviation authorities and governments, probably because they can, using obscure emergency powers, maybe. Certain leaks as to their origins and purpose have come to light recently, along with their new name, geoengineering. Did we consent to this? Probably. Second, the Flat Earth. Prepare to have your beliefs challenged by a Loz who brings certain facts not widely known to upset the apple cart in a way only Loz does. Please welcome Lawrence Wright.
Right, okay, welcome to New Horizons. I was here 4 years ago and I did a chat about chemtrails then, and since then I've decided to take a second look at it, and all is not what it appears. And I think the truth community, if you want to call it that, have been misled. So we're going to look at what are they spraying, why are they spraying, and who is spraying. We'll start off with the what. Give me some chemicals or products that you think are being rained down upon us. Barium.
Aluminium.
Aluminium. Any more? Aluminium, oxide, barium.
Unknown microscopic particles.
Strontium. Okay.
Nanoparticles.
Okay. These are the three that they focus on most. Aluminium, barium and strontium. Now, when I was here last time, I showed you a clip from the documentary What in the World Are They Spraying, which is the one that's been seen by most people, because they raised money to have a budget so they could go to Hawaii and do some filming over there. I'm going to show you a few clips on that now, and then I'm going to point out the errors that they've put in it. These are deliberate errors to mislead you. So if you just bear with me a second.
The sky is a very dirty look to it. There's not the white cloud blue sky that we had only a few years ago, but it looks like there's some sort of massive industrial activity or forest fires burning over there, and we see that typically every night. You see even down to ground level, the clarity drops off significantly, and we don't see that except for the days when we have these long lingering trails that spread and cover the whole sky, and on certain days you can see these trails actually dropping vertically like a veil. We assume the particulates are descending, and we have the test to prove that we are being inundated with levels of aluminum and particulates that are literally tens of thousands of times what would already be considered high. So we're not talking about exposure to a slight percentage higher of these toxic materials. We're talking about quantities, for example, off the side of Mount Shasta. If you can pan back, that's a landmark in Northern California, considered to be a pristine water source. Aluminum or snow sample off the side of Mount Shasta tested 61,000 parts per billion.
This is just ordinary snow water, and people are drinking this stuff when they're hiking on the mountain. And remember, government action is required at 1,000. This is 61 times over the government limit, and our hikers are drinking this poisonous water on Mount Shasta Mountain itself. God. Barium, 83. Strontium, 383.
So this summer, the people climbing are drinking poison.
Basically. I certainly wouldn't want to drink 61,000 micrograms per liter of aluminum.
So the big one there was the aluminium at 61,000 parts per billion. The problem with that was that the sample they took was not from water. Let me show you what it actually was.
Water. And we tested that crust, and it was aluminum and barium that after a year and a half's accumulation had 375,000 parts per billion of aluminum in it. It's literally toxic. We can say conclusively that what we see in the sky matches expressly what's outlined in numerous patents and the materials on the ground match those patterns. This material was not there 5 years ago. It is a recent phenomenon in the quantities it's in.
So I've just froze the screen there. I'm not sure whether you can read that or not. I might be able to get a clearer one. But if you look at the top where it says matrix, it says sludge. So they haven't tested the water, they've tested the mud at the bottom of the pond. Okay? Now mud contains lots of aluminum, so the reading is misleading. This is aluminium oxide. Now you've been led to believe that this is very dangerous to your health. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this in. You can observe the bottle over the evening and see what happens to this. I'm going to put it over here. Okay, and I've got some in a little bottle here. Would anybody like to have a taste? Anybody? Anybody want to put their hand up and try some aluminium oxide? No? It's dangerous, isn't it? You've been told it's dangerous and it'll get into your brain. Yeah, that's what they're telling you. It's dangerous. Lovely. So let's go look at these figures again. Let's bring them up on the screen. 375,000. Can you read that there now? Can you see the bit that says sludge? That's what they were testing. They weren't testing water. 375,000. So to make that, to bring that down to parts per million, you knock the 3 noughts off. So the barium, 3,090, becomes 3 parts per billion, sorry, per million, in sludge. So the question is, what would it be in water? Yeah. Obviously, it's going to be a lot less, isn't it? Because the mud is highly concentrated. But the thing, what you don't know is that aluminium oxide isn't going to show up in water at all. Does anybody know why? It's not soluble, correct. So when they do the water tests, you're only going to find very small amounts of aluminium anyway. Now in the UK there's various groups, chemtrail groups, who've been doing water testing, but they don't seem to have put 2 and 2 together to realise that the results they're getting are normal. There are elevated levels of aluminium, and I've got some here that you can have a look. So this here is the rainwater test map, and it's Chemtrails Project UK. Okay, I can't get all of it on there, but they took samples and they've all come back and they've got the results of the aluminium, strontium, barium and other things. And let's take a look at some of the results. So, first one, the rain test in Rossshire, UK. Aluminium, you can read that, 20 parts per billion. So you divide that by 1,000, gives you the parts per million. So what's that going to work out? Move the decimal point back, 1, 2, 3 parts. It's 0.02 parts per million. That is a low test. Yeah, and I can show you lots more. Most of them are showing 20 or less. Negligible. Yeah? So we don't have elevated levels of aluminium in our water, in the rainfall. It's normal. And the other ones are very low as well. So if you look at the barium, under 10 parts per billion, and strontium, under 1/10 of a part. That's it, when it says milligrams, that's millionths of a gram. So that's less than 1/10 of a part per million. These are low. Let's have a look at what the safe levels are, what's actually permitted in our water. 7 Trent water. Okay, the UK standard for aluminium is 200 parts per billion. Yeah, so these are well below the maximum permitted. So we don't have elevated levels of aluminium, strontium or barium. So all this hoo-ha about aluminium oxide being a big problem, it doesn't dissolve in water. And when they say it's going to damage the plants, it's not, because it's not going to get taken up in the roots, because it don't dissolve in water. So they've got a big problem with that, but they're not acknowledging. In the same video, this guy did a pH test of the soil, and he lied. I'll have to show you a little video. The guy actually lied about the pH, and you can actually see on this video, because somebody's actually captured it, and it shows you what the pH colour is, and it's normal, but on screen they're lying.
So far, not a single claim has been factual. Let's continue.
10 to 12 times, and we can prove that conclusively. 10 to 12 times, and we can prove that conclusively. Well, this is not
conclusively?
Speculation.
Really?
We can prove conclusively that these metals have been in the rain. We have
in about 2005 or so, the pH here was 5.5, 5.6.
This is the old soil survey of the county. You can look at the page right here. This is my soil right here. It's a Dietz 125, 126 here at my house. And here, the soil reaction pH should be between 4.5 and 6.0. And over there in the pure mud, it's even a little darker. 6.8 right there. 6.8 right there. 6.8 right there.
6.8? As usual, I think we need to take a little closer look at the facts. As you can see, we have a little problem here. There's 6.8, and nowhere along this strip is it any darker than 5.8 except for the dirt. Just to prove the point even further, I brought the still shot from the video into Photoshop and used the color picker to confirm that the color on the strip, the test result, is the same as 5.8, as you can see here. And yet another example of deception where they tell you that they've tested the water when they've actually tested dirt or sludge, which is just dirt with water in it. And after checking historical data, it turns out that for sludge, these numbers are actually below normal.
So, obviously that guy's had a good look through that video, and I've had a good look through it, and there's lots of other stuff in there, and I'll show you some more in a minute, but the whole thing is a psyop. It's fear porn. It's to scare people. And there's lots of other people out there doing it. Most of the people that are in there, I think there's some actors in there, to be honest. And there was a section a bit further up with where they used children to prey on your emotions, and they got this little girl, and they took a hair sample, and they showed you the results of the hair test as to the levels of aluminium in it. So let's just take a look at that.
How about the chemtrails?
Well, that we won't be able to live here and grow our own food, and that our health is going to be compromised.
You think it already has been?
Yes. And the thing is that they're doing it every day here, every day. So it's hammering, micro doses every day. And then, of course, it's getting in the environment, and of course, it's weakening the plants. And it takes a couple years for this to actually weaken the plant. So we are asking for GMO taro. We're asking for GMO papaya because we can't grow our natural seeds. We can't be sustainable. We can't truly, you know, be here as God created us to be.
So my friend convinced me to do a hair analysis on my daughter. So we went ahead and cut close to her scalp and got some really recently grown hair and sent it in. I was just sure that my daughter's hair was going to be so clean with the lifestyle that we live. And lo and behold, it came back and her levels were really high in aluminum. This is the chart here. This is the reference range, and this is where my daughter is. 23.1. Aluminum. The skies are covered with a white mist, and I look up at night anymore and I don't see the deep, dense stars that I used to, and I can't help but think this obviously has something to do with my daughter's health. I don't know where else these heavy metals are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, look how old she is.
Yeah.
She's been isolated here.
Here, and she's...
Here. Anybody looking at the situation would be like, this is paradise. This child should be like superhuman.
Organic farm.
And here you are getting all this heavy metal stuff. And
She has highest level aluminum on the chart.
Never had a vaccine either.
So just in a freeze frame on that one. And if you look at the screen, the reference range for aluminium is 17.3 parts per billion. And it's showing a reading of 23, so it's about a quarter, a third higher. But those reference ranges are for adults. Children excrete more because their bodies are young and healthier. They actually get rid of more impurities through the hair than adults. So that's pretty much a pretty normal reading for a child. But if you take a look at some of the other results on there, you've got the... so if you look at those that are in the red, if you look at the lead's like 4 or 5 times higher than other. She didn't even mention the lead. And then you look at the other ones, the strontium and the barium, it's 0.026, the reference range is 1.7. So the barium is like, a fifth or so of the reference range. So those figures are nothing to worry about. But they're making out that she's been poisoned by aluminium. It's just a normal reading. It does, yeah. If you bleach your hair and use chemicals on your hair, that could have an impact upon it. So, and they brought this scientist guy in who's a specialist in oxides of metals and things like that, and the guy's had a big row with him since because they're putting misleading statements about what he's saying. This guy's actually saying that aluminium oxide is actually good for you. Does anybody know another form of aluminium oxide? Some of you probably even use it. Let me show you. See, aluminium oxide is in bentonite. Now, millions of people now use bentonite for their health to actually purify their bodies. Because what bentonite is, aluminium oxide, it says here at the bottom. The term aluminium oxide is actually referring to alumina oxide. It's perfectly safe. It's inert. Doesn't react with water. And if you ingest bentonite, it will bind with impurities like heavy metals in your body, and it will come out in your excrement. It's what's known as not absorbent, it's adsorbent. So what it does, it will bind with things, but there will be no chemical reaction. So if they were pumping aluminium oxide through the backs of aeroplanes, then what it will do, it will clean up the air rather than poison the air, because any heavy metals that it comes into contact with, it will bind with them and clean the air. So that's the opposite of what you've been told. But there's no evidence that there's any aluminium oxide anyway. There's no evidence of barium, there's no evidence of strontium. There's about 50 samples on that UK Chemtrails site where they've analysed the water, and they've all got normal or lower than normal levels. There's no elevated levels of these products, these metals and substances. They're all normal. So you've been misled. So when I say, what are they spraying? They're obviously not spraying these. So the question is, are they spraying anything? Do you think they're spraying anything? What else do you think they might be spraying? How do you know they're spraying anything unless you've got some hard facts? Yeah, the last time I did a talk here, I broached onto the subject of planes that look like ghosts. They were like holograms in the sky. And I've seen it myself where you've got a line going across the sky. There's nothing in front of it. It's just a line. It's like somebody's drawn a line across the sky. You know, crisscross, crisscross over the whole sky. And sometimes you get that many. There's more lines than the planes exist. And I've been speaking to people on Facebook. Show me some evidence that this is coming out of the backs of aeroplanes. Show me a picture of an aeroplane with the proper logo of the plane, like Ryanair or EasyJet, where you can see something coming out of the back. And to date, nobody has. There hasn't been a single genuine whistleblower from military or commercial airlines to validate any of this. So we don't even know whether this stuff is real. We don't even know whether it's, you know, of man or of something else. But there's severe doubt that if all the chemtrails groups are focusing on these three things, and there's no evidence of it, there's no evidence of planes doing it. All you're seeing is something in the sky that looks like a plane, or shaped like a plane. And usually they're so high up, all you do is see a silver tube going across the sky, can't be identified. Now some people will say, but I got it on flight radar. Well, maybe you did, but that doesn't mean it's true. So I'm not worried about what I see up in the sky now. You know, they say that everybody's going to get sick with respiratory illnesses, and they say that, you know, it's damaging the crops. Well, that's not true. This guy was saying, that professor guy there with the funny hat on, he was saying it was damaging the tomato crops. So I went and looked at the tomato yields. They're getting record yields of tomatoes. It's not damaging the crops. That guy, the hippie guy, you know, on the organic farm, he was saying they're having to get, you know, consider getting genetically modified papaya. So I checked, and Hawaii has been producing genetically modified papaya for over 20 years. It's not something new. They've already been doing it. So they're lying. They're lying to you. Most of the people in that film are lying to you. The guy whose name they used to make that film, Edward G. Griffin, he's a genuine guy. He's been telling, you know, things about the money scam since the 1960s. And they used his name to give credibility to it. But all the other guys, you know, there's some agenda behind it. They want to scare you. And, you know, there's something wholly different going on. We are seeing things in the sky, but we don't know what they are. And in my book, it's not aircraft. You know, you look at the fleet of the RAF, you look how many planes they've got. They certainly haven't got many planes that are suitable for distributing. Anyway, so in terms of what are they spraying, we don't know. We don't know whether they're spraying anything, because they could be just painting lines on a holographic sky, for all we know. We don't know what technology they've got. They could be just lines. All the rainwater tests for those things that they mention, and those are the three that everybody mentions, all the rainwater tests show the tests are normal or below normal levels. So that stuff is not coming down here. It's not affecting. The water companies use the rainwater to send the tap water. They might try and clean it up a bit, but the base water for all the water that you drink comes from the rain, doesn't it? Where else do they get it from? Yeah. So, in terms of what are they spraying? If they're spraying anything, you know, we've established that. I think we've clearly established that these things are not being sprayed. They're not coming down, certainly. If they are spraying them, they're staying up there. Okay, so we've had, what are they spraying? Alright, it's not very good at wiping stuff out. So let's move on to why. If they are spraying anything, why are they spraying? Rub the floor. Come on, give me some thoughts. Why do you think they're spraying, if they are spraying?
Reflecting sunlight to keep the planet a little bit cooler, maybe.
Reflecting sunlight, okay.
Weather modification.
Weather modification. Why would you think they'd want to modify the weather?
This is hot.
This is hot. to increase temperature.
Weather is a weapon enhancement.
Okay.
Repopulation.
I don't think it's any of those. I think it's one of maybe 2 or 3 things. And one of those things is to sidetrack the vast numbers of people who are waking up now to all the government deception. And there are millions of people. You know, Facebook is absolutely chocker. On the, you know, on the news pages, people are posting stuff every day, millions and millions of photographs. People are getting really sick of it, and some people are getting quite ill about it. So if they had the potential to do it, the power to do it, they could create this threat of something that's not even real. If they've got the technology to paint holograms on the sky, yeah, they've got hologram technology. If they've got the potential to do that, they can create all this fear in people, and they thrive on fear, and at the same time they will sidetrack all these people waking up from other issues to focus on chemtrails when it's nothing. But I have another theory, potential theory, because it seems that it's taken, you know, they've been doing it for 20 years or maybe longer. It seems a very long psyop if they're doing it that way. So I'm going to show you a short video clip. The guy who's presenting this clip, for me, is a fraud anyway, but there is some truth in there. So I'm going to present you with another little video clip now. This is from 1908. Has anybody heard of the Tunguska event? 1 or 2 of you? Okay.
This is the age of planetary exploration, when our ships have begun to sail the heavens. In those heavens there are some worlds much like hell. Our planet is, in comparison, much like a heaven. But the gates of heaven and hell are adjacent and unmarked. The Earth is a lovely and more or less placid place. Things change, but slowly. You can lead a full life and never encounter anything in the way of a natural catastrophe more violent than a storm. And so we become complacent, relaxed, unconcerned. But in the history of the solar system, and even in human history, there are clear records of extraordinary and devastating catastrophes. We humans have now achieved the dubious distinction of being able to make our own major catastrophes, both intentional and inadvertent. On the landscapes of other planets, where the records of the past are better preserved, there is abundant evidence of major catastrophes. It's all a matter of timescale. An event which is improbable in 100 years may be inevitable in 100 million. But even on the Earth, in this century, there have been bizarre natural events. In remote central Siberia, there was a time when the Tungus people told strange tales of a giant fireball that split the sky and shook the earth. It happened, they said, on a summer's morning in the year 1908. In the late 1920s, L.A. Kulik, a Soviet scientist, organized expeditions to try and solve the mystery. Eyewitnesses told of a ball of flame larger than the sun that had blazed across the sky 20 years before. Kulik assumed a giant meteorite had struck the Earth. He expected to find an enormous impact crater and rare meteorite fragments chipped off some distant asteroid. However, at ground zero, Kulik found upright trees stripped of their branches, but not a trace of the meteorite or its impact crater. He was deeply puzzled. But he thought perhaps there were meteorite fragments buried in the swampy ground. So he set about digging trenches and pumping out the water, but the expected meteoritic rock and iron was nowhere to be found. Undaunted, Kulik went on to make a thorough survey, despite the swarms of insects and other hardships, because he had discovered something that, in his own words, exceeded all the tales of the eyewitnesses and my wildest expectations. For more than 20 kilometers in every direction from ground zero, the trees were flattened radially outward like broken matchsticks. There must have been a powerful explosion several kilometers above the ground. The pressure waves spreading out at the speed of sound has been reconstructed from barometric records at weather stations across Siberia, through Russia, and on into Western Europe. Dust from the explosion reflected so much sunlight back to Earth that people could read by it at night in London, 10,000 kilometers away. This really remarkable occurrence is called the Tunguska event. But what was it? Well, perhaps some scientists have suggested it was a chunk of antimatter from space, annihilated on contact with the ordinary matter of the Earth, disappearing in a flash of gamma rays. But the radioactivity that you'd expect from matter-antimatter annihilation is to be found nowhere at the impact site. Or perhaps, other scientists have suggested, it was a mini black hole from space which impacted the Earth in Siberia, tunneled its way through the solid body of our planet, and plunged out the other side. But the records of atmospheric shock waves give not a hint of something booming out of the North Atlantic later that day. Or maybe, other people have speculated, it was a spaceship of some unimaginably advanced extraterrestrial civilization in desperate mechanical trouble, crashing in a remote region of an obscure planet. Well, if so, it's pretty startling that at the impact site there's not a piece, not the tiniest transistor of a crashed spacecraft. More prosaically, perhaps it was a large meteorite or small asteroid which hit the Earth. But even here, there are no observable telltale rocky or metallic fragments of the sort that you'd expect from such an impact. The key point of the Tunguska event is that there was a tremendous explosion, a great shock wave, many trees burned, an enormous forest fire, and yet no crater in the ground. There seems to be only one explanation which is consistent with all these facts. And that explanation is this. In 1908, a piece of a comet hit the Earth. No one saw it approach, a small point of light lost in the glare of the morning sun. It had been drifting for centuries through the inner solar system, like an iceberg in the ocean of interplanetary space. But this time, by accident, there was a planet in the way. From the time and direction of its approach, the object that hit the Earth seems to have been a fragment of a comet named NK, hurtling at more than 100,000 kilometers an hour. It was a mountain of ice about the size of a football field and weighing almost 1 million tons. There was no warning until it plunged into the atmosphere. If such an explosion happened today, it might be thought, especially in the panic of the moment, to be produced by a nuclear weapon. Such a cometary impact and fireball simulates all the effects of a 15-megaton nuclear burst, including the mushroom cloud, with one exception: there would be no radiation. So, could a rare but natural event, the impact of a comet with the Earth, trigger a nuclear war? It's a strange scenario. A small comet hits the Earth, as millions of them have during the history of our planet, and the response of our civilization is promptly to self-destruct. Maybe it's unlikely, but it might be a good idea to understand comets and collisions and catastrophes a little bit better than we do. Now, a comet, at least as far as we understand them today, is made mostly of ice. Water ice, maybe some ammonia ice, a little bit of methane ice. So, in striking the Earth's atmosphere, a modest cometary fragment will produce a great radiant fireball and a mighty blast wave. It'll burn trees and level forests and make a sound heard around the world, but it need not make a crater in the ground. Why? Because the ices in the comet are all melted in the impact, and there's going to be very few recognizable pieces of comet left on the ground.
Let's imagine that there's a block of ice the size of a football pitch weighing 1 million tons. Solid ice. There's no way a piece of ice that big would not make a crater. It would make a crater. Yeah, and it wouldn't have gone for miles and miles and miles. It would probably just fraction in the area. So I'm not buying what Carl Sagan's saying on that. And it's interesting that it was more than 20 years before anybody from the West went over there to investigate what went on. And there were reports of lots of ice and a big pool of ice in the area. It's also interesting to note that in 1908, Nikola Tesla was testing his death ray. And apparently he was aiming it towards the North Pole, which is not too far away from Siberia. And if you study the flat Earth, then there's a theory that as you get higher, we all know it gets colder. They tell you the temperature outside an aircraft is whatever, minus 40, minus 50 degrees. And when you study flat Earth theory, you'll see that the Earth does have a ceiling, yeah, and there could be ice on the ceiling. So Nikola Tesla's death ray could have hit the ice and fractured it and brought a load tumbling down, and that would come down in blocks of ice rather than one huge bit. It would fracture and come down in bits, just a bit like your refrigerator. You know, when you defrost in the freezer, it drips a bit and then it comes crashing down. Oops. And it's interesting to note also the book of Revelations, yeah, the Bible. From the sky, huge hailstones, each weighing about 100 pounds. It was actually a weight known as a talent. It's a biblical measure, and that's about 75 pounds. The book of Revelations is foretelling what is to come. Fell on people, and they cursed God on account of the plague of hail, because the plague was so terrible. And that's in all the Bible translations, Revelations, as to what is to come. So maybe this was a precursor of what is about to befall us. And it's also interesting to note that since the 1940s, on a worldwide basis, they have been building underground cities all over the world. And there's lots of evidence of that. You can see it on YouTube and eyewitness accounts. So they are building these cities down there using the money, their Black Ops budgets with these high-speed rail links and things like that. So maybe they know something. Maybe they know that this ice ceiling at some point is going to come down. Maybe it's at a time that they decide it's going to come down by, after Nikola Tesla died in his hotel room, the FBI came in and confiscated all his research. So maybe they have got their hands on this technology now for the death ray, and they could precipitate the all this ice coming down on the entire planet, on the entire Earth, I shouldn't say planet, and they'll be safely tucked up underground, and we'll be all left on the surface with all this ice coming down. So it's an interesting thought that that could be what's going on. And if that is the case, are the chemtrails, are they there to bring this catastrophic event closer, i.e. the chemicals causing the ice to come down quicker, or are the chemicals, if there are any, there to delay all this impacted ice coming down? You know, as you look in your fridge, look in the ice compartment, yeah, it builds up and up and up until it's almost full, doesn't it? If you check in your fridge. So, and then the question is that, I know I'm going on to the flat Earth here, but if it's not aircraft that are doing it, there must have been, you know, if it was aircraft, general aircraft that were doing it, involving thousands of civilians, because you can't avoid using civilians, and there's no evidence whatsoever, then it's got to be something else. Now, maybe it's God's janitors, yeah, with their high-tech craft, who are spraying this stuff, and maybe they're making it look like airplanes to make people think that it's something else, so that there is an explanation for all these lines in the sky. I don't know, but it's a possibility, and it remains to be seen. But if you look at the sale of underground shelters, then they're going through the roof. The wealthy people have all got them in their back gardens, and they only talk about all these people stocking up with years' supply of food for some cataclysmic event that's supposed to happen at some point in the future. So my view is that the chemtrails are either a psyop to scare you, to induce fear, and to distract you from all the other bad things that are going on, or it's a means to bring forward or delay ice coming down from the sky. And that's why nobody seems to know what's going on, and the stuff that they're putting out is unfounded. So, part two, we're going to look at the flat Earth, and as a prelude to that, I've been talking to this guy called Mark Sargent. Mark Sargent is the guy who has been on countless radio shows since he released his series of videos called Flat Earth Clues, and I've been in touch with him myself and actually helped him make one of them and provided some of the information for it. So I'm just going to play his introduction before we move on to part two. We look at the flat Earth. So
this is a Reader's Digest version containing many of the interesting parts of the flat Earth theory. For those who have already started seeing things with new eyes, it will be mostly a recap, but there could be a few new angles you haven't looked at. For the rest of you who are new to this, the first question is invariably, is this a joke? Because it's a joke, right? And that's where we start, because it's one of our two basic childhood facts. 1 + 1 = 2, and the Earth is a globe. We're taught this before almost everything else, and that right there should give you a clue on how serious this secret is. But for those who have forgotten their history, here's the modified Men in Black version. For the first 4,000 years of our civilization, we believed that the Earth was a flattish disk, surrounded by a solid dome barrier called the firmament. All of the 5 major religions had their own version of this, and the churches enforced the belief. Then, around 1514, a man named Copernicus created a new model of the world. He stated that if the Earth was spinning around 1,100 miles an hour and circling the sun at 60,000 miles an hour, the world was then round. And while the math more or less worked, there was a problem. It was 1500, and the technology to prove such a theory wasn't there. The first balloon to carry people wasn't invented until 1760. Sailboats were the only travel over water, and the fastest thing on land was a horse. But the new worldview was promoted and took hold. The religions adapted to handle the new reality, and life moved on. More importantly, the globe model was quickly introduced into the education systems. Over the next 500 years, the challenges to this model faded, to the point where the globe was accepted as universally as physical laws such as gravity. Read that again if you didn't absorb it. For 20 generations, people believed that the Earth was round, because there was a globe in every classroom they sat in. There was no proof. Hundreds of years went by, and still civilization had no way of proving the theory. Planes were invented around 1900, but until 1957, nothing could go high enough to give a true perspective of where we lived. And that's when everything got strange. The United States and Russia both sent up rockets high enough to take decent pictures, and what they saw scared them a great deal. How do we know they were extremely concerned about the sky? Because the US and Russia immediately started firing nuclear weapons straight up, and they kept firing for the next 4 years. A few things to keep in mind here. First, this was now 1958. Nuclear weapons were very expensive and hard to come by. These also weren't those nominal yield 20 kiloton toys we used on Hiroshima. This was high kiloton to low megaton, and we couldn't get them up fast enough. And the strangeness continued in other places. In 1959, only a year into the atmosphere bombardment, 10 nations, including the United States, made Antarctica off-limits to any colonization. A treaty was put in place and to this day remains intact. Over 50 nations now have signed off on this treaty. Do you know any treaty that has lasted that long between all industrialized nations? Moreover, do you know any piece of real estate in the world that is owned by no one? You would think at the very least one of the large oil companies would use their huge financial resources to explore this region, and yet they don't even petition the idea. The short version of the discovery is this. By 1958, the military had discovered the very solid upper and outer edges of our world, and had to create a way to put up do not enter signs without looking obvious. It was tricky, but if there is one thing I have learned about the authority, it's that nothing is left to chance. Most of the work had already been done for them, so their job was primarily in the details. The sky part of the dome was much higher than commercial air traffic, so the only thing they had to worry about there was the space program, which is immediately militarized. The outer border had the natural benefit of not only an extensive ocean, but a scaling decrease in temperature and a steady increase in iceberg frequency to discourage ships, all leading to a permanently frozen landmass that could not be used for any form of agriculture. This ocean and ice layout had worked well for thousands of years because the technology of the current civilization didn't evolve quickly. Sailors avoided cold weather seas whenever possible, and oxygen levels get low enough to harm people, even on high mountains. The brilliance of the design comes in the simple fact that human males are corrupted by power. Corruption so total, in fact, that they would rather hide the world itself rather than risk their power on it. You could theorize that kings and popes were told of the world a long time ago. Maybe an ancient scroll or book. Perhaps an interdimensional being told the tale of what the world looked like. But this was all but dismissed, because even the most powerful leaders of the day couldn't reach the borders. And if they couldn't, what chance did the general public have? It's one thing to be told of the giant impenetrable dome, but it's a whole different animal when you finally stand right next to it. Then the tough decisions have to be made. Do we keep the secret? And how far are we willing to go to keep the status quo? Once they decided to keep the secret, no expense was spared. The rapid progression of rocketry science had to be addressed quickly, and so the moon missions were created. Matt from the NASA channel was right in his thinking that you needed the moon mission event to stage a picture of the Earth from deep orbit, and that couldn't be more true. Establishing NASA as the frontrunner of space exploration also diverted people who would have otherwise created their own space companies for profit. The best engineers, technicians, and pilots were recruited to the NASA space program. Once there, they were compartmentalized on a need-to-know basis. The astronauts know of the deception and are sworn to secrecy under the penalty of whatever motivates them. Private space programs are discouraged, sabotaged, or absorbed into the NASA fold. Private sector spacecraft are just not going to be allowed for several reasons. The most obvious is the collision with the dome itself. The telemetry data from such a mission would show an impact failure at a certain altitude, and if repeated, would raise questions NASA just isn't prepared to answer. There are 3 perpetual questions about our world that can't be eliminated, but avoided at all costs. These are the questions you should ask yourself and others if this protective layer is going to be lifted. I'd like to preface this with a thank you to Max Malone, a conspiracy hardcore who has a knack for boiling down debates to a single paragraph whenever possible. It was he who said, after over 50 years and thousands of hours of space travel footage, both by NASA and other countries, there is no exterior shot where the astronaut completes the simple act of panning the camera 180 degrees, let alone a full 360-degree sweep. This has never happened on any moon mission, exterior space station, nothing, ever. Statistics will tell you that this would have already happened by accident years ago, but it hasn't, and it won't. This is because of the rule they cannot break, the same rule that applies to television set shows that never show the fourth wall. Why? Because there is no fourth wall. Number 2. When you search online for pictures of the Earth from space, 95% of what you will see is a collection of artificial composite shots. In 2000, when I did this search, there was exactly 1 picture by NASA showing the bottom part of Africa and Antarctica. Now that picture is hidden within hundreds of simulated images. There are HD cameras everywhere, and no one is taking a shot of the Earth, because you can't get enough altitude to do it. Number 3. The commercial air travel routes for the southern hemisphere are wrong. This is an easy thing you can check out in 60 seconds. Take a map reading of the distance between anywhere near Australia and anywhere in South America. It's a straight shot across the South Pacific. Now find your favorite travel site and try to get there non-stop. See what happens. The routes start turning ridiculous. I used to business travel for years, and I've never seen anything like it. It's the one thing in the general public world they can't hide, the actual distance between these two places. On a round world, the flight is easy, just a straight shot across an ocean. But on a flat world, it becomes the greatest distance between 2 points. There are no shortcuts, so they distract you with multiple connections and layovers. It's only blind luck that the United States was in the northern hemisphere. Otherwise, the increased traffic would have raised eyebrows by now. I know. It's madness. It's lunacy. There are people who will tell you straight to your face that all the leaders of the world are lizards, and yet these people laugh out loud when you say the words flat earth. I was, and still am, a huge conspiracy guy. I literally ran out of new tin hat topics to research, and I still wouldn't look at this one without embarrassment. But every time I glanced at it, there was something unresolved. And once I saw the near perfection of the whole plan, I was hooked. Do your own homework. Ask the questions. Get past the possibility and see if you can move into an even bigger picture. Like who built the dome and why. That's where it starts to get really interesting and things start opening up. I know I said years ago that the greater good was something that should be preserved, that JFK, Pearl Harbor, and 9/11 were inevitable. I still believe it, and I understand the decisions. The globe illusion, however, has run its course over the last 500 years. It's time to start again. If that means we end up getting the attention of who or what created this place and force the reset of the world, is that such a bad thing? I've put some links in the description that you might want to check out, like the current map projections used by the USGS, the United Nations logo, the Flat Earth Society, high-altitude nuclear tests, the Antarctica Treaty, among others. I'm not allowing ratings or comments on this video for several reasons. One, this topic seems to bring out the worst debates because of the initial denial. That, and I've seen dedicated trolls on the Flat Earth Society website who show up every day and say the same thing to new forum members. It's a joke. It's not serious. nothing to see here. Kind of strange that there are full-time trolls on a site that has less than 500 members worldwide. That being said, please feel free to contact me at msargent23@comcast.net, or heck, just call 303-494-6631. I know no one uses the actual phone anymore, but I'll answer what I can.
Okay, and in part 2, I've got some new evidence for you, further proof that you don't live on a ball. So I look forward to that. Have a nice cup of tea and come back. Okay, now I don't know whether this audience was here for my presentation last year on the flat earth, but this presentation for the rest of this evening is going to be mostly about aviation, which shows that we do live on a flat earth. But let's just take a look. This is where you're told from a child. Yeah, every classroom has a globe when you're a child. But if you look at the globe, where is the only place, if we are on a ball, where is the only place that you can stand upright? At the North Pole. Yeah? But you're stood upright here, in the UK. Whatever that is on here. Is there. So you should be stood out like that, but you're not. Yeah? So how can somebody on the North Pole and the South Pole both stand upright? It doesn't make sense, does it? When you get on an aeroplane, yeah, I've had lots of aeroplane journeys, mostly to Spain and the Canaries. When you go on a plane, it takes off. 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, it reaches its cruising altitude, and the plane stays perfectly level for the remainder of the journey, apart from the last few miles when it comes down to land. But if you look on a ball, apart from on the North Pole, there's no way that a plane can ever fly level. It's either flying up, down, or skew whiff going across. It's not possible. I've been on lots of long cruises, not recently because I ain't got so much cash. But when you go on a cruise, a world cruise, the boat doesn't sail uphill. It doesn't sail downhill. It's not skewed to one side. But on a ball, it would have to be. How does a boat sail around the world without going up and downhill? It cannot. Who said there's an edge? There may not necessarily be an edge. It might be an infinite plane for all we know. Nobody's been there, but Antarctica is off limits to all humans. It's guarded by the military because there's something there to see. So either it's an edge or it's an infinite plane. You know? Why would they stop people from going there? I can go Mount Everest and climb the Eiger Mountain, go to the most dangerous places in the world. Nobody's going to stop me. You go to try and get to Antarctica and there'll be armed boats to stop you going on. You can't go there. So let's look at some of the things that are associated with the flat earth. Satellites. Okay. Just a snapshot of the audience. How many of you think that satellites are real? Most of you. Okay. And how many do you think there are up in the sky? There's supposed to be as many as 40,000 satellites up in the sky, all on different trajectories. There's no air traffic control for satellites. Now, we've had these fibre optic cables, and they're still putting up masts for mobile phones all over the world. If satellites were real, these would be obsolete. There would be no need for them. And GPS is not using satellites, it's using ground-based triangulation. The only thing that's changed is they've incorporated computer systems on it. The USGS, the US Geological Survey, do you know what map it uses? It uses the flat Earth map. Let's take a look at some aviation. Aviation Authority. Their logo is some wings around the flat Earth. Not the ball Earth, the flat Earth. United Nations. There's no Antarctica on it. Why might that be? IMO. Not sure which one that one is. the Maritime Organization, that's C. The World Meteorological Organization, they're using the flat earth map. United Nations, we believe the earth is flat. So the logos of air, sea and weather, yeah, they're all using the flat earth map, as is the USGS. They're not using the conventional map. People say, yeah, but I've been on a plane and I looked out of the window and I saw the curve. Let's take a look, shall we? This is from Concorde, out of the window. So you're looking out the window of Concorde. If the earth was a ball, yeah, and you're looking out of the window, you're going to be looking down to the horizon. But the horizon is always at eye level. It doesn't matter whether you're on the top of Mount Everest or on the ground, you'll see the horizon at your eye level. If it was a ball, you'd be looking down at the horizon as the earth curved down. On land, there we are, another aeroplane, flat, another horizon, another horizon. Some of these are at 100,000 feet and it's still flat as a pancake. Tops of buildings, that's off the top of Mount Everest, flat. Mount Everest, flat, 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 flat. Everywhere you look, the earth is flat. Problem is, ever since you were a child, you've been conditioned to think that you live on a sphere. You never decided from your own research that you live on a sphere, but because you've had it drummed into you all these years, you accept it as a given. It's not even worth, it's a big joke. Flat earthers are some of the dumbest people on earth. We've even had President Obama, he's getting flat earth incorporated into his speeches now to try and make flat earthers look stupid. Okay, so I looked at cruises. This is a P&O round the world cruise, and that's where it shows on the conventional map. Yeah? And people say, well, you can't, how would you sail around the world on a flat earth map? Well, you can actually sail around the world on a flat earth map, and this is the route. So on the flat earth, the boat can sail level all the way round, and it's going around the world, but on the ball earth, it can't. This ball's supposed to be the truth, but on models, aviation, boats, humans, cars, doesn't work. If you look at the shape of the ball, if you were travelling from Scotland down to London on a ball, it would be downhill all the way. You wouldn't need to put any petrol in your car. You just use your brakes. But you don't. It's not downhill all the way because it's flat. Now, let's look at aviation. I'm going to show you this little route from Santiago to Sydney. And they've actually used John Travolta to publicise this so-called non-stop flight that flies all that way without stopping. And it's supposedly taking 14 hours and 12 hours on the way back. But you can't book it because myself and several friends on Facebook, we've actually gone through the motions of going onto the flight booking sites and tried to book these flights. We weren't going to pay for it, but we just wanted to see how far we could get. And you get so far, and then all the boxes grey out. You've seen boxes greying out on the internet, so you can't press on it, and you can't get any further. So these flights are bogus. So it's 14 hours, they say. Okay. Don't say. Okay. So then you look at this one. This is a two-stopper. So 99% of the published flights are two-stoppers or even three-stoppers. And you look at how long it takes. This is broken down. 43 hours, 30 minutes. Yeah. Now, if you look at this particular flight here, yeah, from Santiago to Sydney, first of all, it goes from Santiago to Texas. and flies 4,652 miles. And then it goes from Texas to San Francisco, 1,641 miles. So it's done 6,300 miles. You look at the distance it's got to do on the last leg, it's 7,426 miles. Now, how far was the distance on the non-stop? Did you look at that? So it's done the best part of 7,000 miles, and it's still got more than 7,000 to go. Well, let's go back and see how far it is non-stop, according to that. 7,000 miles, 7,048 miles. So it goes 7,000 miles, and it's still got 7,000 to do. So this plane is flying twice as far, using twice the aviation costs, twice the staff costs, which are all very expensive. And in today's world, they're trying to make planes that are more fuel efficient, believe it or not. You know, because aviation fuel is one of the biggest costs of flying a plane. Let's take a look at how this pans out on the maps. So we've got the flat Earth map, which people will say is a load of rubbish, but it's used by the USGS, and your conventional map. Let's see what these routes look like. So, here we have Santiago, South America. Up to that, the east coast of America, across to the west coast, and down to Sydney. Does that make any sense to you? They're flying twice as... The passengers are... it's taking them best part of 3 days to get there. If they can get there in 14 hours, why isn't the plane taking the red line? Why don't you think... Why do you think that plane's going that way? Picking up passengers. That would be like a plane, like a bus going down to London, stopping off in Cornwall to pick up passengers. They just wouldn't do it. Let's take a look and see what it looks like on the flat Earth map. Doesn't make any sense. Does anybody think that makes sense on there for a route? If you look at the routes in the northern hemisphere, they make sense, because the northern hemisphere is okay for routes, but it's skewed in the south on the flat Earth map. Those lines there are the routes that I showed you on the previous, on the booking day. So now you look at the flat Earth map, Is that starting to make a bit more sense? It's virtually a straight line, isn't it? They can't fly it non-stop because it's twice as far. So they take the most straight route they can and stop off on the way. Makes every sense on the flat Earth map and no sense on the ball Earth map. And you can check routes from Africa to New Zealand, Australia to Africa, Australia to South America. Every time you're talking 2-3 stops, and none of them make any sense on the ball Earth. And they're all flying twice as far, using twice the fuel, if the map was correct, but it's not. Anyway, Mark Sargent made a video. Okay, and I'm going to show you the short...
Part 9, The Magic Show. This is part of a series of clues that can help you get your head around both the design of the flat Earth system we live in and who has been involved in the deception to hide it from you. This flat Earth perspective initially started out as a problem-solving exercise that was going to be built into Clue 7, otherwise known as the Long Haul. But after some research and a little patience, it has evolved into something that warranted its own section, and is a perfect example of good things come to those who wait. So emails and phone calls have been coming in, almost all of them positive. Several people from around the world commented on the southern plane routes. They said that while 95% of the long routes in that hemisphere were connections, which in itself raises red flags, there were a few pesky non-stops that seemed to contradict the overall logic. The question then posed to me was obviously, are they real flights? Could they be put there to throw the Flat Earth group off? If it was a trick, could I figure out what it was and how it was accomplished? I accepted the challenge and started my impression of Morgan Freeman as he went up against the Four Horsemen magician crew. Now, admittedly, I was skeptical to start, because the flights went against the third rule, that being the flat Earth has no shortcuts. Only a globe has shortcuts. As in magic, I had to assume the rule was not being broken, but only hidden, or having the illusion of being broken. But first, I had to see the trick itself. I had to see the planes in question and see them make the route. Anyone can list a flight, but does it actually go from point A to point B? With the help of several other people, this was then put to the test. While just about everyone with a cell phone knows about GPS and how it can track things, many people don't know that even though it's a system built by the military, there is a very public aspect to it. So while your phone is tracked at all times, so are other things, most notably all air traffic. Now, if you're military, you could view military planes. If you work at a cargo carrier like UPS or FedEx, you can view transport planes. The general public is mostly limited to commercial air traffic. This can be viewed in several places, and the one I chose was planefinder.net. You can use others like FlightAware, Flight Radar 24, Flight Tracker. It makes no difference because they are all tied into the same exact GPS system. All these sites do basically the same thing: track every commercial plane in the world from start to end in real time. So I spend day after day looking at the Plane Finder global map, which you see here. At any given time, it's tracking between 3,000 to 7,000 flights that are en route anywhere in the world. You'll notice two different colors for planes, red and yellow. Yellow just means there's a 5-minute delay in processing and only applies to the United States. The point here is, in order to prove out these flights that go against flat Earth theory, I need to watch a few as they cross either the South Pacific or Indian Oceans. The web page updates automatically, but just to be sure, I close and reopen the page every 30 minutes or so and wait for an ocean plane. And I wait, and I wait, and I wait some more. Hours pass, days pass, and no red planes to entertain me. And somewhere in this process of me just staring at these empty oceans, waiting for a plane to cross, something occurs to me. Can you guess what it is? Nothing is crossing these oceans. Not non-stops, connections, multiple connections, nothing. But that's not possible, right? The planes have to reach their destinations. So I change gears and just watch the coastlines of anything in the southern hemisphere, and I start to see it. I follow a simple plane out of Brazil on its way to South Africa, which, by the way, is not part of the long-haul argument. It's offshore just a few hundred miles. I get something to drink, and when I come back, it's gone. Just a glitch, right? So I follow another, and another, and the same thing happens again and again. Once the plane reaches an imaginary line in the water, GPS makes it disappear. Then a friend who is also working on this problem sends me some links, which I've included in the description. I encourage you to take a look at them. At first, they don't seem like much, just an average flight log showing speed, altitude, locations, things you could expect. Then you scroll down to about 3:30 in the morning, and the location drops away and is replaced by either the word approximate or the word estimated. This then continues for the next 5 hours until, miraculously, 1 hour before landing, the flight log reestablishes itself, and the GPS system shows the plane in real time about to reach its destination. So to be clear to those who may not be seeing everything here, the flights are being dropped off GPS, and their flight data is also turned off and stays off until they are almost on top of their arrival point. And you say, well, that's how GPS works. Well, no, because the northern hemisphere has planes flying all over their oceans. And then you say that maybe it's a localized southern hemisphere thing. And I say, then why are all the flights over or near land perfectly tracked? Furthermore, this is a US-based system, with Americans flying on vacation every single day. You're telling me that those people aren't going to be tracked? In addition, the Vanishing Plane Act is happening to not only the South Pacific and Indian Oceans, which I would expect, but also the South Atlantic, which isn't part of the flat Earth argument. There are a bunch of flights that cross this relatively small ocean between South America and Africa, and every one of the planes is hidden shortly after takeoff. So then you say, what would be the purpose of hiding those shorter routes in the Atlantic? It's because of something I didn't see right away. If you hide one flight, you have to hide them all. Showing the GPS routes in the Atlantic, but leaving out the Pacific and Indian Oceans would raise different questions. So the logic here, despite being very sneaky, is sound. The third rule is that the flat Earth has no shortcuts. If you look at the azimuthal equidistant map again, and look close, you notice that while the South Pacific, South Atlantic, and Indian Oceans make up the lower sections on a globe, they make up the outer ring on a flat model. In that model, there is no shortcut between Australia and South America. If you are creating flight routes, you have only two choices. You take the long way around, clockwise or counterclockwise, and stay on the ocean, or you cut across the land in the middle. But if you cut across the land, you have to create connections, because on a globe, it wouldn't make sense to fly over the top of the United States to get to South America. Neither of these choices are ideal. So the authority came up with a compromise. Disable GPS and lose the planes for every ocean flight in the Southern Hemisphere. Then reactivate them once the destination is reached. This is just one of the lengths that they are willing to use to keep you from seeing it. Don't just hide some things, hide everything, so that maybe the topic isn't addressed. And some would come back and say, well, nice going. You've just pointed out a flaw in their system, and sooner or later they will fix the gap. Maybe. But not soon, I think. Remember, this is a rule, not a guideline. They can't change the map, so they have to work within its limitations. If they have a better workaround, I can't wait to see it. So do your own research and ask questions. Oh, by the way, welcome to the flat Earth, and enjoy your flight.
So you have a situation where all the southern oceans, no flights ever cross them on the flight radar, none at all. It's because they can't do it, it's too far, it's beyond the range of conventional aircraft, so they don't show anything. They couldn't show them anyway because GPS is not satellites, it's ground-based, and these southern oceans are so far apart, it's beyond their range. Let's take a look at some little flight radar shots. There's a few here, and you can see for yourself, I actually stayed up for hours and hours, and you can see these southern oceans, nothing ever flies across. I stood for about 12 hours watching it. Nothing ever flies across them. This is Plane Finder, the one that Mark was using, and you can see this is just another snapshot of these southern oceans. Nothing. Another one. There we are. Absolutely nothing crossing those southern oceans because they can't, it's too far. So, has anybody ever been on a holiday to the Canary Islands? Anybody? Somebody must have. Yeah? Do you remember getting on the plane? Yeah. Was the flight, was there any turbulence, or was it just a regular flight? Straightforward flight. So you got in you sat in your seat in the plane and it took off, and whatever, 20 minutes later it got to its cruising, so the nose was going up until you reached your cruising height, didn't it? Is that what happened? Oh, they might go up and down if there's turbulence, but let's assume that it's calm. Generally speaking, the plane will take off, and then you'll be level in your seat. The plane will be perfectly level, flush with the earth for the rest of the journey. Is that what happened with you? Did the nose go up or down until it was time to land? You know when it's going down, don't you? Yeah. So until you got to the Canaries, did it stay more or less level? It stayed level. What about you, Rob? Did it stay level for you? Alright, well I've been to the Canaries probably about 20 times, yeah, and it always stays level. It doesn't dip. Now, how far do you think the Canaries are away from the UK? I'm just using this as an example.
3,000 miles.
It's about 2,000 miles. Let's have a flight from Glasgow, just for convenience, to Gran Canaria, and you can see that it is 2,006 miles. Yeah, and the direction for that 2,006 miles is more or less south. Yeah, there's a map of the route. More or less south. So it's coming down the earth on this ball. Yeah, where's the UK? It's there, and it's coming down off the west. Off the west coast of Africa. The plane's coming down, so the plane has to descend to get down the ball. Now, using conventional maths to work out how much it would need to come down over that distance, this is a standard formula for the Earth. It's 8 inches times the number of miles squared. So it's 8 inches times 2,000 times 2,000. So we all know that 1,000 squared is 1,000,000. So 2,000 squared is 4 million. 4 million times 8 is 32 million inches. And that works out at just over 500 miles. So over that journey between the UK and the Canaries, the plane, to take account of the curvature of the Earth, which most of you think you live on, the plane has got to come down 500 miles. That's conventional maths. The Earth is a ball after all. But it doesn't. And the plane would have to be coming down, the nose would need to be down for the entire journey. For every mile that plane travelled, it would need to descend a quarter of a mile to actually get down and land. Of course, when you got to the airport, the runway was flat, wasn't it? But you can't have flat runways on a ball, can you? You know, you'd be taking off downhill, wouldn't you, on a ball? Would you not? How would you get a flat runway on a ball? Somebody tell me. How do you get a flat airport? You'd have to dig into the earth, wouldn't you? You'd have to carve it into the earth and then fly out like you're the Starship Enterprise. So that proves that the earth is flat. Because you don't come down and down and down for the entire journey. But you'd have to. Okay. Planets. Somebody give me a planet. Mercury. Okay. Does anybody believe that there is actually a spherical planet, this sort of shape, called Mercury? Solid ball somewhere. You believe that? Yeah. Why do you believe that? You've been told. Right. You've been told. What evidence do you have to prove that that this place called Mercury exists? Only what you've been told. So you've got no evidence of your own that it exists, other than what you've seen it. You saw a little bit of light in a telescope. Yeah, you didn't see a huge ball.
Not a huge ball, no.
Okay, but we've had all these space probes, have we not? Yeah, apparently NASA sends space probes up every year all over the solar system. Do they not? Yeah. So, the camera has been invented, has it not? Yeah? Why aren't there any photographs? Why are there no photographs? They're not real, they're composites. And NASA admit the photographs are composites. Let's have a look if you go and see what's on Mercury. If you go online and search for photographs. Some of these are NASA's, but none of them are real. Look, you've got these photographs of Mercury, and they're all different. That's really weird, isn't it? Let's have a look. I mean, that looks a bit like a bowling ball to me. Have anybody been 10-pin bowling? Yeah? I had a bowling ball like that once. So that's one picture. Oh, there's another. Does that look exactly the same? You'd think it would, wouldn't you? Let's have a look at another one. That's different again. And another one. And another one. This one time it's gone red. And back to the bowling ball. Somebody give me another planet. Mars. Okay, let's have a look at Mars. Of course, you've all seen the squirrel on Mars, have you not? From NASA's official photographs. Have you seen the squirrel? Do you think they were on Mars? Don't think so. A bobcat. All right. Isn't it funny on that picture there? You can see the Earth quite clearly like that. If that was the case, you'd be able to see Mars just the same because the Earth is bigger than Mars. But you can't. Oh, it's changed colour again. Colour different again. Different again. Oh, look at that. You can see the Earth's moon from Mars. Somebody give me another planet. Saturn. The rings of most of these pictures that you see, in fact all of them, none of them are real, they're just artist depictions. They're impressions of what it might look like if we ever got to see it. But nobody's been there, and no space probe has been there. Otherwise you'd have some real photographs. So you look at this picture, and you've got all this stuff in the background. Let's look at the next one. Different colour again. Totally black on this one. There's no stars in the background on that one. Different angle this time. Shadows this time. So if you go online and look for pictures of the Earth and the stars and the planets, you won't find any. They're all artists' impressions at best.
Lawrence, I must admit I have actually seen the ring Saturn and its rings through my own telescope.
Oh yeah, you can see something like that, but it's just a tiny bit of light. It might be a bit of light that's got a ring round with it.
Yeah, it looks about that.
Yeah, I know. I've seen those. Yeah. But nobody's been there. And if NASA have sent probes there, you'd have these beautiful photographs, and you've got the Hubble telescope. So you check at the back. What were you going to say?
You're saying all when we went to the moon, the astronauts in America, when they were actually on the moon, they were showing the Earth. Those pictures were false, man.
They were. All false. Yeah. NASA lie about everything.
Why?
Well, this is the Hubble. Now, the Hubble telescope is a joke. It doesn't exist. There is no Hubble telescope. There are no telescopes. You look at that. It's covered in tin foil. It's just a toy, just a mock-up. Come on, does that look real to you? Sure. Why? The reason they want you to think the world, what they want you to think is that we're a tiny speck in a vast universe and we're insignificant, yeah? Whereas the Earth is the centre of all that is. Everything that you're shown that's supposedly from outside the Earth is false. It's been made up. So that's why people don't give a shit. It's all each man for himself. Because there's nobody watching over you. There is no God. They want a godless world or a creator. Can you imagine if it became public knowledge that there were boundaries to the Earth, which would mean it had to have been created by somebody, yeah? Evidence of a creator, evidence of God. If people knew that somebody was watching over you, then all the crimes are going to stop. Because they know there's a God watching over them, or creator. So they want you to think that we're nothing, we're nobody in a vast space that goes on forever.
What evidence do you have that there is a God? What evidence can you convince me that there is a God? You insist that there is one.
I'm not saying there's a God, I'm saying that the earth was made, it was created. That's why you can't go beyond Antarctica, because there's some... Pardon?
Who created it?
Who?
Yeah, or what?
Something that's got vastly more power than what we have. But the evidence is there in the creation of the earth. They don't want you to see it. If you... There's Mike Degree, yeah? He was a marine biologist, and he went down in his submarine. And the Bible talks about firmaments, which are like different layers. And when he went down, I haven't got the clip with me today, but you can find it on YouTube. When he went down, he saw an ocean beneath the ocean. But it was impenetrable. It was so super saline, the submarine couldn't go beyond it. That is the waters beneath the earth, and there's waters above the earth. They talk about this in the Bible.
So you'd rather believe a 2,000-year-old document that was written by people?
If it was evidence... why don't you think they want to let you go to Antarctica? It's because there's an edge there. There's a barrier. There's something there that will confirm the existence of a creator.
Do you think we might focus on a petri dish then, in some labs?
We could be in a snow globe on somebody's desk, yeah.
I'd explain the sunrise and the sunset.
Okay, let's talk about sunrise and sunsets. Okay. The sun appears to rise, but it doesn't. It's at the same height. It's perspective. So it appears to be highest when it's by you. If you look down a railway line, you'll see it narrow into the distance, and you'll see the railway the telegraph lines going down into nothing. They're not getting smaller. It's just that your range of vision has what's called a vanishing point, after, which is where the horizon is, which is about 3 miles. You can't see beyond that. And all the sun does, it goes outside your range of vision. It's always there, and then it comes round in its circle and comes back again. So if you look at a railway line, yeah? Do you think that railway line's bending over the curve of the earth? It's not. Engineers don't make any allowance whatsoever for the curvature of the earth. But you can't see beyond 3 miles on that railway line. And it's the same with the sun.
The train's getting smaller than that, isn't it?
You can't, same with the sun. You won't, pardon? It doesn't, no, but the Creator can do anything he likes with the sun. The Creator can do anything he likes. You're talking about somebody, if somebody can create an entire earth, then what appears in the sky, yeah, what they can do is way beyond what you could comprehend.
The sun does appear at different sizes from different parts.
Sometimes the sun is further away, and when it's apparently going down, it gets larger. How would you explain that on a ball earth? You couldn't explain it.
Is it light refraction through the atmosphere?
I mean, you look at this like this space agency, SpaceX. They hide things in plain sight. SpaceX. What does an X mean? No. They're not going anywhere. Let's look at the sun. Okay. Now, conventional science is going to tell you that the sun is 93 million miles away. You were taught that at school, weren't you? I was taught that. No. If they ask you in your exam, how far away is the sun? It's 93 million miles. Everybody knows that. How do you know it? Because somebody told you. But what conventional science will also tell you, even NASA, even Carl Sagan, they will tell you that the sun's rays, when they hit the earth, will be parallel, because they've got to travel 93 million miles. They're not going to be coming out at odd angles, otherwise they wouldn't get it. Only straight lines are going to hit the earth. You look at those sun's rays there, yeah? You've got a 45-degree angle there. And what that means is the sun is very close. It's only about 3,000 miles away. If you look at the sun and the moon, have you noticed the sun and moon are the same size as an observer? Have you noticed that? Yeah? They're the same size. But what a big coincidence. The sun is 400 times bigger than the moon because it's 400 times further away. Yeah? That's why official science tells you they've got all these very wonderful coincidences. But you cannot get sun rays coming like that, yeah, from 93 million miles away. It's impossible. If you look, that sun's going down, yeah? If that sun was 93 million miles away, yeah, you're not going to get a lot of those angles. And if you look, you've got a line of sunlight coming from the sun, yeah, all the way to the shore. Can you see the line of sunlight coming to the shore, folks? You can see that, can't you? But if the sun was 93 million miles away, that light would need to bend round the curvature of the Earth. The only way you can have sunlight over the Earth is with the sun that's close by above the Earth. It ain't 93 million miles away.
How far away is it then?
It's about 3,000 miles away, and it's only about 35 miles across.
Is there any way you can prove that?
Yeah, if you use one of those chronoscope things.
What happened with the eclipse of the sun about 15 years ago?
Yeah, they reckon that there may be what's called a black sun in the sky which causes it. Well, I don't think astronauts have ever got... Or when you see a rocket being launched, there's nobody on them. You know the Challenger? Do you remember the Challenger? All those astronauts are still alive. They're all working in universities and colleges. I haven't brought the photographs with me, but I can show... They're all still alive, and some of them kept the same names. And a couple of them are claiming to be the twin brother. Those Challenger astronauts are still alive. Nobody was on that aircraft, but they had to kill them off in the public to maintain the illusion. You can go and check it out yourself. Challenger astronauts still alive. And it'll tell you individually pictures of them then and now. You can tell it's the same purple. They've got a few grey hairs and they've got a few wrinkles on their face, but they're the same people. They're not dead because they didn't get on board that ballistic missile. They were. No, he's already tried. He bounced off the upper limits. I haven't got the film with me, but I could show. If you actually go out, if you type in flat Earth glass ceiling, yeah, you will see Richard Branson's spacecraft. Yeah, you'll see the exhaust coming out, and then it will all cut out, and it comes down. It can't get there. There's a barrier. There's an upper barrier. Nothing's ever left the Earth. That's why all the pictures you see are artist depictions. They're pretending that you're going into outer space. Pardon? Yeah, but you don't know.
In the last test, something broke.
Look, do you remember watching the BBC when the news was coming on? For years and years and years, you got this frigging globe. This is just to get the globe in your mind.
You still have to explain why they want this picture. You said it's to keep us in the dark and to show what's the advantage of that.
Of what?
Hiding the truth for these people.
Because they want you to... Because these are evil people. They want you to think you're insignificant. Yeah? So... I don't know. But that's what... This is one of the latest moons, yeah, that they discovered off Jupiter. Dinky Dinky Donkey, it's called. I mean, they show you things like that. That's just a piece of pumice stone. This is what they just show models of bits of rock and say this is a planet. There was a documentary that came out. I don't know whether you saw it, and it was called "The Lie We Live," because they're trying to get this ball Earth, flat Earth type thing into your psyche. And this documentary, it was about 9 minutes long, and it was called "The Lie We Live." Yeah, and it was all about making it out. It was all about how horrible things are on Earth. But it wasn't about that really. It was about the ball Earth, trying to make you think the Earth is a ball. And if you watch this, I'll put the pictures on. There we go. Manage. And you know, this is just a selection over 8 minutes. I've just picked these few out. You have a look. These are what's coming up. Some of them are subliminal. Yeah. This was nothing about flat Earth, but look at these images that you're getting. The Lie We Live. Check it out. Yeah. Does that look flat to you? So it goes from flat to a curved road, to flat again, flat as a pancake, flat, flat, a bendy bridge, curved bridge. They're showing you the contrast between flat and curved just to confuse you. It's to play with your mind. Then you've got somebody stood on a ball, yeah? What's that got doing in something that's nothing to do with the flat earth? A flat beach with dead fish? A circular, flat disc? And some of these pictures of the ball earth were subliminal, so they were only in for a split second. Flat as a pancake again. These were burgers, but it's symbolic of being flat earth. And then in a shop, there was hundreds and hundreds of images. So take a look at that. Now you've got this earth, okay? We've got this earth. And it's spinning round. And it tilts. And it's also got some other motions. Let's look at the so-called motions of the earth. So the earth is supposedly, if you add the spin together and the speed it travels around the sun, 69,000 miles an hour. That's about 90 times the speed of sound we're going at. Just around the sun. Yeah? Can anybody feel the spin? Anybody? Can you feel the spin in this room? Anybody? Can anybody feel it? Can anybody feel the spin? No. But you believe it's spinning, don't you? Because you've been educated to believe. The earth is motionless. It ain't going anywhere. And then the earth is apparently travelling 43,200 miles an hour towards Lambda Herculis. But it's also travelling 15,624 miles an hour perpendicular to galactic plane, and also going 446,400 miles an hour orbiting the galactic centre, giving a total speed of 574,000 miles an hour. Yeah? And most people believe all this bullshit. So if the earth was going 500,000 miles an hour, and the earth's been here for 4.5 billion years, why are all the stars, or what appear to be stars, they always stay in the bloody same place? Not an ounce of movement, they're always in the same place. It's impossible, but it works on a flat earth.
They have moved over the
Pardon?
thousands of years.
Pardon?
They have moved gradually over thousands of years. And
They've hardly moved at all. If we were going at, if you're going at 500,000 miles an hour, then over a few years they're going to look a whole lot different. And the only way they get away with that is saying that the stars are like trillions of miles away. They just make this shit up. They're just blobs of light. They're bits of light through the Earth's glass ceiling. And then we've got, who believes in gravity? You believe in gravity. Why do you believe in gravity? Can you tell me the mathematical formula for gravity? Anybody tell me the mathematical formula for gravity? I'll tell you what, I've looked for it on the internet trying to find out Einstein's maths for it. It ain't there. But this guy called Einstein discovered it, didn't he? He must have been a fucking... Newton, sorry, I should have said. He must have been a real genius. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at some of Newton's work, shall we? There's weight, density. One of these little seed caps of a dandelion can just drift up, can't it? Gravity's so powerful that it can hold a man by his boots on the base, yeah? But it'll let a little seed pod drift away. It's amazing, and of course you can only have gravity on something that's really big like the Earth. You can't make a model of it. That's weird, isn't it? Well, let's have a look at some of the most fabulous work of Isaac Newton. Yeah? These are his musings. Vegetables. Suppose that ye pour of a vegetable filled with fluid, make it of and globule a yolk, rough away ye particle, and rest of subtle molar in ye pour mist from towards by the mass juices continually dry from its roots of trees upwards, and juices pleasing dregs in ye pores and wanking passages, sketchy pores and winds before they. This is the guy that discovered gravity. You believe him? Come on. This is the guy, and everything since he invented it, you've believed it. Gravity, you know, and the earth, and water. All right, let's get, if we got a big long trench in this room and we filled it full of water, would it curve? Would the water curve, anybody? No. So why would it curve on a ball? What happens to something when it spins that's covered in water? What happens? Eh? That's what happens. Wet tennis ball. All the water will just shake off. And don't forget, it's going at 500,000 miles an hour. How is any water going to stay on it? And then, if you check official science, they're going to tell you that this planet, this Earth, 4.5 billion years old. Wow. That's a long time, isn't it? And of course, if you listen to Brian Cox, he'll say it was all bits of dust that came together. That's a bit weird, because the Earth is supposed to be molten in the middle. How do bits of dust turn into a molten centre? How does that work out? Huh? How did that work out? So 4.5 billion years, but it's still red hot down there. How long is it going to take to cool down? I actually worked it out. If the entire Earth had cooled from the inwards outwards, yeah, for 4.5 billion years, it would have about just over an inch a year. It would have cooled down. That's not much, is it? You know, if you've got a big ton block of molten metal, yeah, a week later it'd be stone cold, wouldn't it? So, reality never mirrors what they tell you. Their science cannot be mirrored in reality. Everything they tell you is complicated maths that no bugger understands. But they're wearing a white coat and they're scientists, so you believe them. But they're lying to you. And you've got a little dandelion flower, yeah? That can just float away. You've got this gravity, it can hold a man in Australia upside down. 200-pound man. But it can't hold that down, can it? That's weird, isn't it?
Well, you're not taking into account the effects of the atmosphere, are you?
The atmosphere works on everybody. This is the theory from gravity. Somebody actually wrote it down. Do you get that? That's gravity for you. Yeah? Where would you start looking at that? Huh? You think, yeah, sounds complicated, it must be right. I'm not going to try and work that out. Man has only been down 8 miles. So when you get these... When I was at school and we did geography, and we did the cross-section of the Earth and all the different layers of magma and the molten bay, but man's only been down 8 miles. Anybody seen the International Space Station? Thinks they've seen it.
Oh, I think I've seen it.
Well, if you've got a plane flying 10 miles up, huge jumbo jet, yeah, about the same size as the International Space Station, yeah, and it's a little tiny dot, but the space station's like 200 miles up, so you won't be able to see anything. Let's take a look at Manchester United football ground, shall we, and see where this is just on Google Earth. Google Earth don't have satellites, by the way. They use planes. They pretend to have satellites for the higher one, but they're just CGI. So you look at Manchester United. There we go. Anybody recognise the ground? Yeah? So that's from so high. And then you go a bit higher. Little tiny dot. And a bit higher. I've just put this one over here, which was bigger, so you can see a point of reference. And then you go a bit higher. Yeah? Barely see it there. You can see the roads and stuff, but you can't see... Because the football ground's about the same size as the International Space Station, apparently.
It's not reflecting the sunlight.
Okay, and then you go a bit higher. Oh, tiny, and a bit higher. But you're supposed to be able to see this ISS coming across. It's probably just something that they've... You know, a drone plane or something lit up over there. Because there isn't an International Space Station. It's filmed on the ground. I showed this last time, yeah? You can look at the footage of the International Space Station where they're supposed to be working out in space, repairing the International Space Station. but you're getting air bubbles. It's because they're filming it in underwater tanks. One guy dropped his tool bag and you saw it fall down onto the false earth. And then on one of the International Space Stations, they got a live feed with an audience. So they were supposed to be up in space and the audience were on the ground. But the guy up in space, these are not astronauts, by the way, they're actonauts. They're pretending to be actors. And he let slip that they weren't in space, they were in Maine, USA, on the ground, not in space. If you just type in ISS, International Space Station hoax, there's loads of footage about NASA. NASA's faking everything. You must have watched the rockets going up. The rockets go up, and after 30 seconds they're like that, and they're always flying over the bloody sea. Why do you think that is? They're not going up into space. Space is up. They're flying over the sea because they ain't going anywhere. It's just a show for you. And then they have cameras on them, and they show you the first minute, and then camera cuts out. Wouldn't you like to see the spacecraft bursting through the atmosphere and seeing all the magnificence of outer space? Well, you never bloody well see it because they don't go there.
How high up do you think the ceiling is that?
It's about 100,000, about 10 kilometres. And then they try and get this in your mind. You look at this graffiti, yeah? They said it was flat. Obama, he's put in his speeches now. It's everywhere. This is getting out now. Thousands of people. If you look at, when I did my last talk on chemtrails, there was about 100,000 videos about chemtrails. Now there's millions, yeah, 4 years later. And if you look on Flat Earth, there's thousands being, by individuals who find out the Earth is flat. Some of them are freaking out. And there's over 100,000 videos on YouTube now, just on the Flat Earth. And then you've got another one. What Jesus really taught. It was a ball Earth, and he didn't teach that. And then you got here, the world is flat. Volkswagen. Well, if you listen to Neil Armstrong's speeches, yeah, he actually tells you. I haven't brought them in tonight, but he's actually hinting. If you read these words, because he's obviously scripted, he's telling you about the edge. He says it gets a bit hair-raising when you get to the edge. And then he talks about truth's hidden layers. Yeah. So you look at Neil Armstrong at the press conference after the Apollo 11, yeah, and he looks like someone's just shot his dog. They all look sick as a chip. They should have been so happy. It's because they were having to pretend to have gone to the moon. And all subsequent things, they're all faked. And everything that NASA does is fake. Back to your satellites again. Google have got a fleet of planes to get all their photographs. If they've got all these satellites up there, why do they need planes?
They've got a fleet of submarines as well, apparently.
Hey, I don't know. And then you've got the seabed. The seabed's flat as well.
They're doing a Google Ocean thing now.
So let me ask you. Okay, we've looked at gravity. Does anybody believe that man has actually been into space? Anybody think he's been into space? You believe NASA? Do you believe NASA? You do? You think they won't lie about everything then? Don't liars tend to lie about everything? They'd have to, wouldn't they? And all these probes that have been out to all these places, some of them have been going there 40 years or so, and still sending photographs back. Yeah? All fake. All these fake pictures from Mars.
What's beyond your ceiling and what's outside?
Nobody knows. Nobody's been there. You know, and if you sit out in your garden, I was sat out in the garden today. I was watching the sun moving across, coming over that way. That way. The earth wasn't spinning. I couldn't feel it spinning. But it seemed to me that the earth was coming across. Sorry, the sun was coming across the earth. But no. It's the spin of the earth. You know, everything that's opposite is the truth for all these pseudoscientists.
You've seen shadows on the moon, haven't you? Like, eclipses and that. You know, sure.
Yeah, but think about the Earth. If the Earth is a construct, yeah, it was made. Yeah, I mean, there could be a race of giants that made the Earth. We don't know. You know, we could be in a little petri dish for all we know. So they could make these things. They could make if you look at moonlight, it's totally different to sun. If the moon is lit up, it's not from the sun. It's a different type of light. The light from the moon comes from within it. You may laugh. Where do you think it comes from then?
It's reflected from the sun.
It's not, because the light's different. Sunlight and moonlight are totally different. You look at fires.
One's direct light, one's reflected light.
They're totally different.
Yeah.
You're talking, you're arguing with me with conventional science, which is a pack of lies.
What's your degree?
Degrees are not worth the paper they're printed. You go to university, yeah? The square hat.
So you're not a scientist then?
All the science, most of science is fraudulent. Most of physics is fraudulent.
I've seen pictures of the moon.
You're ingrained in what you've been brought up to believe. You've been indoctrinated.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree. I think I'm more knowledgeable on science than you are.
Please tell me how you can stand upright everywhere on the ball. Gravity.
To the centre, you're perpendicular to this.
If gravity existed, which is not unproven, and it could stick you, how does it make somebody upside down upright?
Because
how?
It's a ball, so it's
how can anybody? Why can't you model it then? Come here and show me. Show me how people can stand up everywhere. You can't model it, can you? If it was the truth, you could model it. How can a man stand upright on the bottom? He can't.
Because you've got some pencil or something.
Yeah.
Right. You're upright there.
Yeah.
You're upright there.
Yeah, you're turning the ball. The ball
You're
doesn't turn.
upright there. But
at the same time, give me a man upright there and one there at the same time. You can't. It's impossible.
Because gravity takes you to the centre, perpendicular, straight line to the centre. So you're always upright, no matter where you are. You're always upright.
Well, why can't you model it? Tell me why you can't model it. Tell me why you can't model the ship sailing around the world on here without going up or downhill. You can't.
Because there is no up or downhill. It's a
there is no up or downhill. No. I've been up a hill and down a hill.
That's gradient.
It's all pseudoscience now.
That's great.
That's what you've been indoctrinated.
Pseudoscience.
That's pseudoscience. That's pseudoscience. It's pseudoscience.
I'm a proper scientist.
How does a plane fly around the Earth? How do you think a plane flies around the Earth? How does it fly around the Earth level? How does it do that? How does gravity do that?
Again, the same reason I've just explained why everything is upright, because it's flying parallel to the surface. I also have a pilot's license.
Well, you'll notice that the horizon is always at eye level. Is it not? Is the horizon at eye level?
Everything's at eye level.
Well, it should be. You should be looking down at the horizon. You should be looking down at the horizon.
And I have seen the curvature of the Earth from up there.
Well, I've shown you lots of pictures where I've shown you pictures at 100,000 feet. There's no curvature.
You've shown pictures of
from balloons that have gone up to the maximum height they can go to.
You just got the road to Blackpool. Stand on the prom, look straight down to sea. You'll see the Earth is curved.
You won't see it's curved. It's flat as a pancake.
I've seen it curved.
In your mind, you have.
What's the distance to the horizon?
All right, you're saying that a plane flies around the Earth. If a plane's going to fly around the Earth, it's got to go like that round the ball, hasn't it? How else is it going to go around the Earth? So if that plane's flying around there, it can't fly level.
It's
It
parallel.
can only fly level at the North bloody Pole.
It's parallel to the surface.
So you can't model it, can you? Can you model it with a model? Can you model it with that ball there? You can't, can you? But you can with the flat Earth. Look. You can fly a plane level round the flat Earth, but you can't round the ball. So all your arguments, none of them are modelled. You can't model them. Why is that? If that's the truth, it should fit the model, but it doesn't, because it's a lie. You cannot prove a lie. Go and check it out.
Lawrence, I was saying before, somebody was filming the moon and they actually saw it glitch, so they decided it's holographic.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
They've actually taken
I've seen that, yeah. Crow treble 7.
Yeah, they take
Yeah.
footage from somewhere in the States.
Yeah.
It's actually glitching.
Yeah.
How many people would have to be in on this though? You have to have quite a few people who've got some sort of knowledge.
Like him, most people have been indoctrinated from birth. To
You would have to have a stratum of people that...
no, NASA now, yeah. The guy, Matt Boylan from NASA, he was a graphic artist for NASA. He was employed to depict pictures of universes and planets and space. And he was at a meeting at the Hamptons, some posh place in America. And over dinner, they told him the Earth is flat.
When was it decided that the Earth was round?
By Copernicus. Incidentally, he was a Freemason. He just made it up. And it was only published after he died.
So the only thing is, if you take that as a, if we go and scale model, that's the Earth. Your aeroplane would be the smallest speck of dust.
It would, but it could still fly around its level, couldn't it? You can't. You show me our plane can fly around this. Let's say you're going to fly from the North Pole to the South Pole and back again. That plane's got to fly upside down around the South Pole, hasn't it? It has to.
It could only fly around it if gravity was correct.
You can't do it. It don't work. You're not standing. You're standing upright here. Everywhere you go, it looks like
Imagine gravity is like a magnet. Then it works.
And then they've done the Bedford level experiment. Bedford level, yeah, curvature of the Earth. There's no curvature.
Yes, there is. I've seen it.
There isn't any curvature.
Well, you tomorrow go to Blackpool and look out to sea, you'll see it.
You can see 60 miles across in America. Yeah, I haven't brought the video with me. How can you see something 60 miles away if the curvature of the Earth means it will be below where you're looking? How can you see it?
Depends how high you are.
No, this is seeing it on the beach. You can see it 60 miles away. Look, here's your evidence. Why are these planes in the southern hemisphere flying 14,000 miles when it's only 7? If it's really only 7, why are they doing it? Aviation fuel's expensive. Lady at the back, come on, explain this.
Yeah, because
Use your degree to tell me why they're going this crazy route.
You're using one plane to go to 3 destinations as opposed to 3 planes to go to 1 destination.
They don't do it in the northern hemisphere. They just go non-stop. It's because the southern oceans are so much bigger.
Put up your azimuth projection again. I've got something I want to discuss with you. Put up your azimuth projection.
That's the actual route.
Right.
This is the actual map used by the USGS.
Okay, then explain to me then why, when you go from Britain to Australia, you go that way, then over there, rather than go straight that way.
I'm not talking about Australia. I haven't plotted that one on.
Well, that's Australia, isn't it?
That is, yeah.
Yeah, but from Britain to Australia then.
I've plotted it. I haven't got it with me.
No, I'm saying.
I don't know what the route is.
It's from here to Dubai, then down to Malaysia, and then across to Australia.
Yeah, there isn't a problem with that route.
Well, it's not. You say that one's a straight line because it's a flatter. So why isn't this one a straight line?
I haven't plotted it. I haven't plotted it.
Oh, because it's not a straight line because you haven't plotted it.
You explain this one to me. It's nonsense, isn't it? They're actually going, I've got it in black and white, they're going 14,000 miles.
So just explain that to you. But I'm trying to argue this one. Why then, if they go a straight line that way, if you think that's a straight line...
Well, you can't show me what the route is.
I've just told you it's from there to Dubai.
Show me the evidence.
From there, this is the way the aircraft flies. This is the route it takes. It goes from Heathrow to Dubai, then across to Singapore, and then up that way, so it's going a long way around instead of going straight across there. Doesn't make sense, does it?
And is
it saying about airspace and other countries
you're telling me that airline companies are going to use twice the jet fuel, 3 times the staff costs, 3 times the wear and tear on the airplane? Yeah, only in the southern hemisphere, but not in the. Most of the flights are non-stop in the northern hemisphere. It's only in the southern. That's because the Earth is flat.
The one I've just explained to you goes from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, because Australia is in the southern hemisphere.
In your world, it is, yeah. And
In this world, yeah.
Why does the USGS? Yeah, which do all the map making in America? Why are they using the flat Earth model?
It's just
why are they using it?
Just a type of projection.
They use the flat Earth model. They don't use the ball Earth model. Alright. No, that's a fact. You can check it out. The USGS used the flat Earth model.
Different projections of maps. What are my degrees in geography, by the way?
Pardon?
What are my degrees in geography?
Questions to the end.
Your academic qualifications don't mean jack shit to me. They're worthless. Because all you're learning is what they want you to know. They don't want you to know the truth. Geography is telling you that you live on a ball. It's a ball. Yeah. In your world. You've been well indoctrinated. Well, I'll tell you. It's not a ball. Tell me this. Why are NASA pretending to go into space? Why are they pretending?
What evidence have you that they are pretending?
I presented it last time. Did I not show it last time, Rob? Yeah, I presented it last time. They're lying, they're making it up. Why are they doing that? Why does NASA need to employ a team of artists to depict space? If they've got the real thing, they wouldn't need artists. But they do, they employ them. Because they've got to make stuff up. Why does a rocket, go from vertical to horizontal within 30 seconds of launch every time? Every time. You can check it for yourself. They're all on YouTube. Why do they go vertical to horizontal 30 seconds later? They're not. They're going level with the flat Earth. Space is up. It's not that way. And why do they turn the camera? Why do they turn the cameras off?
Because they use the curvature of the Earth, the rotation of the Earth, to give them a...
NASA, who brought all the Nazi people over, Operation Paperclip. You think they're an honest, good, caring organisation? Why have they got the serpent tongue as their logo? Eh?
You tell me.
You trust NASA, do you? You trust their stuff, would you?
I believe some of what they say.
Have you seen the pictures of Mars?
Yes.
You have. Have you seen the picture of the bobcat, of the nuts and bolts, of the pottery? No, these are close up. You can see quite clearly what they are.
The rocks.
There's a squirrel on there.
It's a rock.
It's a Mojave ground squirrel. You believe there's something up there, do you?
It's a rock.
You're a deluded.
It's a rock.
You're deluded. You probably believe in evolution, don't you?
Yes.
You do. So you believe that everything came out of nothing.
I don't believe...
A big bang.
I don't believe that the Earth was created 4,000 years ago.
I think to be fair, if you are going to take an open-minded view, it has to work both ways. We've been receptive. You should at least explore what I said to you earlier, which was the difference between the run line and the great circle track. You should at least know that because it presents the evidence as evidence.
You're talking terminology I'm not aware of.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. For the point of the argument, you must...
But I've shown you the route. Do those routes make sense to you?
Not the South American one, but the one you were showing with the curved tracks does, yes.
Which one?
The one that you showed right at the earlier on this one.
Well, I could show you countless ones. I've done them. I haven't because of time limitations. All the Southern Hemisphere routes are all to pot. They're all 2 and 3 stops, taking 40 and 50 hours. Where the cruising range of a big jet now is about 9,000 miles. They've all got them. So why are they taking 3 stops?
The 3 stops I can't answer. I'm just saying that if you want to use the...
And why can't you book the flight? You go home and try and book a flight. Why are they using John Travolta? You try and book a flight from Santiago to Sydney, Qantas. You go and try and book that and then come and tell me about how you couldn't get it. Because you won't. Because it don't exist. Go and book it. Why would they make flights up that don't exist? You'd have to explain it in more simple terms.
He can't, he's got a closed mind. Like he was using the
Right, Rob, I think we've just about done. Dangerous to your health. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this in. You can observe the bottle over the evening and see what happens to this. I'm going to put it over here. Okay, and I've got some in a little bottle here. Would anybody like to have a taste? Anybody? Anybody want to put their hand up and try some aluminium oxide? No? It's dangerous, isn't it? You've been told it's dangerous and it'll get into your brain. Yeah, that's what they're telling you. It's dangerous. Lovely. So let's go look at these figures again. Let's bring them up on the screen. 375,000. Can you read that there now? Can you see the bit that says sludge? That's what they were testing. They weren't testing water. 375,000. So to make that, to bring that down to parts per million, you knock the 3 noughts off. So the barium, 3,090, becomes 3 parts per billion, sorry, per million, in sludge. So the question is, what would it be in water? Yeah. Obviously, it's going to be a lot less, isn't it? Because the mud is highly concentrated. But the thing, what you don't know is that aluminium oxide isn't going to show up in water at all. Does anybody know why? It's not soluble, correct. So when they do the water tests, you're only going to find very small amounts of aluminium anyway. Now in the UK there's various groups, chemtrail groups, who've been doing water testing, but they don't seem to have put 2 and 2 together to realise that the results they're getting are normal. There aren't elevated levels of aluminium, and I've got some here that you can have a look. So this here is the rainwater test map, and it's Chemtrails Project UK. Okay, I can't get all of it on there, but they took samples and they've all come back and they've got the results of the aluminium, strontium, barium and other things. And let's take a look at some of the results. So, first one, the rain test in Rossshire, UK. Aluminium, you can read that, 20 parts per billion. So you divide that by 1,000, gives you the parts per million. So what's that going to work out? Move the decimal point back, 1, 2, 3 parts. It's 0.02 parts per million. That is a low test. Yeah, and I can show you lots more. Most of them are showing 20 or less. Negligible. Yeah? So we don't have elevated levels of aluminium in our water, in the rainfall. It's normal. And the other ones are very low as well. So if you look at the barium, under 10 parts per billion, and strontium, under 1/10 of a part. That's it, when it says milligrams, that's millionths of a gram. So that's less than 1/10 of a part per million. These are low. Let's have a look at what the safe levels are, what's actually permitted in our water. 7 Trent water. Okay, the UK standard for aluminium is 200 parts per billion. Yeah, so these are well below the maximum permitted. So we don't have elevated levels of aluminium, strontium or barium. So all this hoo-ha about aluminium oxide being a big problem, it doesn't dissolve in water. And when they say it's going to damage the plants, it's not, because it's not going to get taken up in the roots, because it don't dissolve in water. So they've got a big problem with that, but they're not acknowledging. In the same video, this guy did a pH test of the soil, and he lied. I'll have to show you a little video. The guy actually lied about the pH, and you can actually see on this video, because somebody's actually captured it, and it shows you what the pH colour is, and it's normal, but on screen they're lying.
So far, not a single claim has been factual. Let's continue.
10 to 12 times, and we can prove that conclusively. 10 to 12 times, and we can prove that conclusively. Well, this is not
conclusively?
Speculation.
Really?
We can prove conclusively that these metals have been in the rain.
In about 2005 or so, the pH here was 5.5, 5.6.
This is the old soil survey of the county. You can look at the page right here. This is my soil right here. It's a Dietz 125, 126 here at my house. And here, the soil reaction pH should be between 4.5 and 6.0. And over there in the pure mud, it's even a little darker there. 6.8 right there. 6.8 right there. 6.8 right there.
6.8? As usual, I think we need to take a little closer look at the facts. As you can see, we have a little problem here. There's 6.8, and nowhere along this strip is it any darker than 5.8 except for the dirt. Just to prove the point even further, I brought the still shot from the video into Photoshop and used the color picker to confirm that the color on the strip, the test result, is the same as 5.8, as you can see here.
The errors that they've put in it. These are deliberate errors to mislead you. So if you just bear with me a second.
The sky is a very dirty look to it. There's not the white cloud blue sky that we had only a few years ago, but it looks like there's some sort of massive industrial activity or forest fires burning over there, and we see that typically every night. You see even down to ground level, the clarity drops off significantly, and we don't see that except for the days when we have these long lingering trails that spread and cover the whole sky, and on certain days you can see these trails actually dropping vertically like a veil. We assume the particulates are descending, and we have the test to prove that we are being inundated with levels of aluminum and particulates that are literally tens of thousands of times what would already be considered high. So we're not talking about exposure to a slight percentage higher of these toxic materials. We're talking about quantities, for example, off the side of Mount Shasta. If you can pan back, that's a landmark in Northern California, considered to be a pristine water source. Aluminum or snow sample off the side of Mount Shasta tested 61,000 parts per billion.
This is just ordinary snow water. And people are drinking this stuff when they're hiking on the mountain. And remember, government action is required at 1,000. This is 61 times over the government limit, and our hikers are drinking this poisonous water on Mount Shasta Mountain itself. God. Barium, 83. Strontium, 383.
So this summer, the people climbing are drinking poison.
Basically. I certainly wouldn't want to drink 61,000 micrograms per liter of
so the big one there was the aluminium at 61,000 parts per billion. The problem with that was that the sample that they took was not from water. Let me show you what it actually was.
The water. And we tested that crust, and it was aluminum and barium. That after a year and a half's accumulation had 375,000 parts per billion of aluminum in it. It's literally toxic. We can say conclusively that what we see in the sky matches expressly what's outlined in numerous patents, and the materials on the ground match those patents. This material was not there 5 years ago. It is a recent phenomena in the quantities it's in.
So I've just froze the screen there. I'm not sure whether you can read that or not. I might be able to get a clearer one. But if you look at the top where it says matrix, it says sludge. So they haven't tested the water, they've tested the mud at the bottom of the pond. Okay? Now mud contains lots of aluminum, so the reading is misleading. This is aluminium oxide. Now you've been led to believe that this is very
Right, a massive welcome back to Lawrence Wright with Chemtrails and Flat Earth Revisited. Controversial and entertaining. Loz pokes our beliefs and encroaches on our comfort zones with two subjects. First, the modern phenomenon known as chemtrails, an observable phenomenon carried out in most countries' airspace and denied by aviation authorities and governments, probably because they can, using obscure emergency powers, maybe. Certain leaks as to their origins and purpose have come to light recently along with their new name, geoengineering. Did we consent to this? Probably. Second, the flat earth. Prepare to have your beliefs challenged by Loz who brings certain facts not widely known to upset the apple cart in a way only Loz does. Please welcome Lawrence Wright.
Right, okay, welcome to New Horizons. I was here 4 years ago and I did a chat about chemtrails then, and since then I've decided to take a second look at it, and all is not what it appears. And I think the truth community, if you want to call it that, have been misled. So we're going to look at what are they spraying, why are they spraying, and who is spraying. And we'll start off with the what. Give me some chemicals or products that you think are being rained down upon us. Barium.
Aluminium.
Aluminium. Any more? Aluminium, oxide, barium.
Unknown microscopic particles.
Strontium. Okay.
Nanoparticles.
Okay. These are the three that they focus on most. Aluminium, barium and strontium. Now, when I was here last time, I showed you a clip from the documentary What in the World Are They Spraying, which is the one that's been seen by most people, because they raised money to have a budget so they could go to Hawaii and do some filming over there. I'm going to show you a few clips on that now, and then I'm going to point out.
And yet another example of deception where they tell you that they've tested the water when they've actually tested dirt or sludge, which is just dirt with water in it. And after checking historical data, it turns out that for sludge, these numbers are actually below normal.
So, obviously that guy's had a good look through that video, and I've had a good look through it, and there's lots of other stuff in there, and I'll show you some more in a minute, but the whole thing is a psyop. It's fear porn. It's to scare people. And there's lots of other people out there doing it. Most of the people that are in there, I think there's some actors in there, to be honest. And there was a section a bit further up with where they used children to prey on your emotions, and they got this little girl, and they took a hair sample, and they showed you the results of the hair test as to the levels of aluminium in it. So let's just take a look at that.
How about the chemtrails? Well, that we won't be able to live here and grow our own food, and that our health is going to be compromised.
You think it already has been?
Yes. And the thing is that they're doing it every day here, every day. So it's hammering, micro doses every day. And then, of course, it's getting in the environment, and of course, it's weakening the plants. And it takes a couple years for this to actually weaken the plant. So we are asking for GMO taro. We're asking for GMO papaya because we can't grow our natural seeds. We can't be sustainable. We can't truly, be here as God created us to be.
So my friend convinced me to do a hair analysis on my daughter. So we went ahead and cut close to her scalp and got some really recently grown hair and sent it in. I was just sure that my daughter's hair was going to be so clean with the lifestyle that we live. And lo and behold, it came back and her levels were really high in aluminum. This is the chart here. This is the reference range, and this is where my daughter is. 23.1. Aluminum. The skies are covered with a white mist, and I look up at night anymore and I don't see the deep, dense stars that I used to, and I can't help but think this obviously has something to do with my daughter's health. I don't know where else these heavy metals are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, look how old she is.
Yeah.
She's been isolated here.
Here.